The following podcast is brought to you by PeacemakerNetwork.com. PeacemakerNetwork.com. Audio is provided by Pixabay.com. That's Pixabay.com.
Well, while most people consider Central Florida as home for Disney World and vacations, well, through the years, several women have gone missing. Today, we're going to talk about Court TV Mom. We're going to talk about the case of Michelle Parker, how she vanished in thin air almost 14 years ago. We're going to talk about this and more on this episode of Charlie Crimebuster. It's what some people, they're calling it the fastest minutes in podcasting.
The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are solely those of the individuals participating and do not represent those of city, county, state, or federal law enforcement agencies, nor sponsors and platforms of this presentation. The Charlie Crimebuster name and all forms and abbreviations are property of its owner, and its use does not imply endorsement of or opposition to any specific organization, product, or service. All individuals described or mentioned in the presentation should be considered innocent unless or until found guilty in a court of law. This presentation contains adult subject matter. Listener and viewer discretion is advised.
Well, hello and welcome to today's program. We've started a series now where we're talking about missing women in Central Florida. We're talking about here in Disney World land, where people are all caught up in all of the joys of vacationing, and very few realize that behind all the bright lights, there are some dark moments when women are missing. This is our second in that series. But thank you for joining us on the Charlie Crimebuster crime train today. We encourage you to reach out with a shout out. You can reach me, charliecrimebuster at gmail.com. charliecrimebuster at gmail.com. You can make suggestions, ask questions, and you can even lodge objections. It is a safe spot. Check out, of course, our sponsor, peacemakernetwork.com, as well. We'll put all that in the show notes so you have it right there at your fingertips. But let's get into today's program. It has been called one of the most baffling mysteries in Central Florida history. And one of the unique things about the missing of Michelle Parker is that she disappeared after appearing on an episode of People's Court TV with her ex-fiancé, Dale Smith. Now, Michelle and her former fiancé, Dale Smith, well, they always had what you might call some of those difficult relationships, always up and down. There was a blessing, though. They were both blessed with twins, a girl and a boy. But all of that ups and downs and some pretty dark things happening in their relationship caused them to split up. Yet the troubles continued. And they were even airing their dirty laundry before millions of others on a 2011 episode of People's Court. Incidentally, that episode aired the same day she disappeared, nearly 14 years ago. And today, still no sign of Michelle. And no charges have ever been filed. Though there is a person of interest. There is a person of interest who became a suspect. And he has been the same person of interest and suspect through the duration of this case. Now, Michelle's stepmother, Gail Parker, she said about Michelle, well, she had hopes, she had dreams, she had plans. She went on to say, in a flash of a moment, she was gone. And now it's unbelievable how that kind of a thing can happen. But yet it did happen. It happened right here in the home of Disney World, where millions of people vacation to spend time with the family and friends, enjoying sights and sounds of laughter and fun. But for Michelle's family, all those sounds, they were replaced with crying and grief as they tried to deal with the missing of a loved one. Now, Michelle was last seen, of course, dropping off her 3-year-old twins at her ex-fiancé's house, Dale Smith, at his Orlando condo. And that was the same day, by the way, that this court TV episode appeared before the public. But what about that incident that brought them to People's Court? Well, in some of those troubled times we talked about earlier at a motel, Michelle threw her engagement ring at him and went off the balcony of the motel they were in. Dell, he wanted to sue her for, well, the value of that ring. And so he asked her to appear on the court TV program. You know, on those shows, you do get an appearance fee, and that appearance fee more than pays for any of the fines that might be levied against you as a result of the case. It's a good way to get money, if you might say, for something that you were going to sue for anyway. In fact, those fees will be more than any of the fines that the People's Court would levy on them. But now you could tell on the program that was aired, you could tell there was little love there that was left and a whole lot of animosity. In fact, here's what she said on People's Court. She said he gets, talking about Dell, pretty malicious and vindictive. She went on to say he's a mean person, especially when he's been drinking. You can see for sure that there was no longer love in paradise for this couple. Now let's talk a little bit about Michelle. We do know that she was getting on with her life. In fact, she was doing quite well. Started her own small business, a tanning salon that was. And she advertised it with a large decal on the back window of her vehicle, her SUV. The big words GLOW, G-L-O-W, talking about, spray tanning. Had it and advertised it. She was also going to a technical college there to better herself for a new career in cosmetology. And to make ends meet, in addition to going to school, in addition to having her own business, well, she worked extra jobs, bartending at 2 popular night spots in Orlando area. And she had tons of friends. Yep, it was most notable. When the public got involved in her search, well, there were tons of people who all came together to try to help find her. So she was a very popular person, had a lot going on for her. So sad that her life ended, or at least she began to be missing and without a trace at this time. Now let's talk a little about the suspect. Let's talk a little bit about the suspect, Dale Smith. He, on the other part, had somewhat of a troublesome past. He had had several domestic battery charges. He was actually in one fight with a couple of guys that involved beating up a worker at SeaWorld. And in that fight, while he was involved in it and helped beat up this guy, there was another guy that ended up stabbing the guy to death. Yet Dale had helped beat him up, kicked him several times. Dale's been in jail before. He joined the Marines, but only to be discharged. That's right. Dishonorably discharged, that is. Actually court-martialed for illegal drugs and domestic violence with a former life. Charges of domestic violence he has faced. He's no stranger to domestic violence. He definitely had a violent past. And so really no one is really surprised that he is named the suspect in this case, the alleged perpetrator. In fact, one time, Michelle was trying to get an order of protection from Dell, and she stated this in her filing. In her filing, she said that he smashed the passenger side window in her SUV, took the car seats out, and threw them on the road. She also alleged that he yelled to her, quote, unquote, "Your day is coming." Now, some have called her the court TV mom in this case, and she was, of course, quite vocal about Dell's shortcomings on the public TV show. She had, of course, her family believes now, though, that she was kind of done with him once and for all. And that may, too, have fueled his anger towards her when she dropped off her kids on that day that she went forever missing. So that was on November the 17th. Let me ask you, was this the day that she had coming? When Dell said, "Your day is coming," was that the day that it happened? No one is really surprised that he is the prime suspect in this case. Now, if you've joined us on other Charlie Crime episodes, you know that one of the best ways that we can get our hands around a case is to look at a timeline. So we're going to give you a timeline about this case so that you can wrap your hands around this case as well. But before we do, we're going to take just a moment to take a break and to share with you Charlie Crimebuster's Crazy Crook of the Week. Well, our Crazy Crook story today And we cannot find any time at all that we can't find them. They're all over the place, especially here in Florida. You all know about Florida Man. Well, this was a Florida man, a Marion County Florida man. But let me tell you about this guy. This guy was pretty bold in what he was doing. He was a car thief. He was one of those guys that would steal cars. And you know what? When a responding deputy found him, this is what he told the Marion County Deputy Sheriff. He said, "You better have your doors locked. I like to steal cars." Well, police officers have heard it all, but I guess they paid a little more close attention to them afterwards, when he hopped into the deputy's cruiser and took off. That started a chase throughout the entire county. And that joyride, as often they do, it ended with a pit maneuver, and the suspect, of course, in cuffs now. Now he's going to have to do the time. He did the crime, and now he's got to do the time. However, he did prove one thing. This crazy crook did prove he wasn't bluffing when he said about his car-stealing tendency. And so the deputies, they did take it on the cheek on this one, and they reminded everybody, the public, that some warnings should be taken very, very seriously. So my friend, this man, who was crazy enough to let the deputies know ahead of time that he was going to steal their own cruiser, he is indeed Charlie Crimebuster's Crazy Crook of the Week. Well, now back to our main focus, Michelle Parker. Well, the day she went missing, well, she started out that day leaving her father a voicemail, a very precious voicemail that I'm sure he cherishes to this day. However, sadly, that was the very last message that he received from Michelle. Now, around 2:30 on that same day, Michelle went to her mother's hair salon in Oviedo. While she was there, she went out and she got some supplies for her mom. And her mom reminded her that this was the day that her court TV appearance was supposed to be broadcast on the air. It was, of course, recorded earlier, but it was scheduled to air on that very day in November. Now, her mom was somewhat surprised because Michelle wasn't very pleased about that. In fact, she stated basically she could care less about it. She was done with that. She had no plans to even watch the program. However, during this same timeline, let's talk about Dale Smith, the suspect. On this same day, he did not even go to work. And not only did he watch the program, but he recorded it as well. That says to us that program was very important to him. And there are some people who have speculated that this could have been what it was that took Dale over the edge. Because if you saw the program, you could see that he probably was embarrassed. Because on national TV, with millions of people watching, she told the public how violent and mean he could be. We know he was a guy who thought a lot about his image. He even tried to pose one time for one of those calendars, with his shirt off. So he really cared about his image. And his image during this program, well, perhaps he was embarrassed. Now, was this embarrassment motive for Dale to lose control and do something to Michelle? Anyway, after seeing her mom around 2:30, Michelle then left to pick up her twins from daycare. She was then planning to head to her home after she dropped her twins off at her ex-fiancé's house, Dale Smith Jr. Now, keep this part in mind. Her mom had also said that Michelle said she was tired. She wanted to go home afterward and rest before her shift that night at the barn in Sanford, Florida. But yet that statement was totally opposite of what Dale had said when he reported that she said she wanted to go shopping. Shopping where? In the Waterford area. Waterford area. Remember that word, Waterford. So back to our timeline. 3:15 on the way to Dale's house to drop off the twins, she sent a text to her new boyfriend, a guy by the name of Nathan Mitchell. 3:17, she was actually seen on a security cam in the area as she drove towards the home of Dale Smith Jr. That home at the Carter Glen condos at Goldenrod and Lee Vista in Orlando. Now, 3:30, Michelle's 11-year-old son. She had another son. He was 11 years of age, and he did arrive at her home from school, but he did not see his mother there. So he calls his grandmother, Michelle's mom. He asked her, "Where's Mom?" And Yvonne, her mother, she was surprised that Michelle was not at home yet. So she called Michelle's phone, but no one answered. She even tried to contact Dale several times, but she was also unable to get in touch with him. She knew that her daughter was going to Dale's house to drop off the twins. So the same day around 4:30, her brother, a guy by the name of Dustin Erickson, he sent her a text, asked where she was, and got a simple text back. Simple text back. It simply said, wait for it, simply one word came back. Where are you? The word Waterford. Now, Waterford Lakes, it's near a nearby outdoor mall. It's about 11 to 12 miles from Dale's house. Now, many people believe that this text that was answered was not answered by Michelle. She usually sent longer text replies, often used along with those replies, smiley faces, hearts, all that kind of stuff. Just wasn't like her to send a one-word text back. It is like some other people, though, right? A lot of guys sometimes don't like to get very, very wordy in their texts. Now, when Dale was finally reached, and they couldn't reach him, they said he wasn't around, but then they used a ruse. They said something happened to the other son, needed medical attention. So then Dale finally comes to the phone, and when they said, "Where's Michelle at?" he said, "She's not here." So where was she going? Oh, she said she was going shopping. Going shopping at Waterford. Waterford. Then gets the text back from Michelle, Waterford. Now, I don't know about you, but me thinks something fishy is going on. I don't think she was going to Waterford that day. She was tired. She wanted to get home. I think that Dale used that word Waterford and that he was the one that was using her phone at that time. I think allegedly he was the guy who had her phone and used that text. It's very unlikely that Michelle went shopping. She was tired. She wanted to go home. She wanted to see her son. She needed to rest before her work that evening. And it's not within her nature. No one that knows her for one moment believes that she went shopping that day. But back to the text. Many believe that it did not come from Michelle. You see where we're going, don't you? All right, back to our timeline. 4:30 now. According to Dale Smith's attorney, let's get back to Dale in this timeline, 4:30. He then goes to visit his parents with his children. Now, this is important. He went to his parents' house. Remember that in the timeline. Now it's around 6:53. Now Michelle's sister's trying to get a hold of her. Tries several times. No luck. 7:20 p.m. Her sister reports Michelle missing to Orlando police. 7:30 to 8. This is the same day that she went missing. Michelle was scheduled to work at a very popular bar called The Barn in Sanford, Florida. She did not show up. 8:55, her SUV is shown on traffic cam at the intersection of Vineland and Conroy Road. But get this, that decal on the back of her vehicle wasn't there. Had been scraped off. Sounds like someone covering their tracks, right? Yep, I think so. What about you? The next day, her vehicle was recovered at a parking lot, Walden Palms Apartments, 4700 block of Walden Circle in Orlando. Again, those decals advertising her business, not there. We also know her purse was still there, indicating this was not a robbery. I think we have to pretty rule out carjacking too, don't you? Doesn't make any sense that the carjacker would take time to rub off the decal on the back of the SUV. It is more like something someone would do that knew her and would know that that word on the back, which simply said Glow, was a reference to the business that she owned. So they would do that to try to take attention away from the fact that that vehicle actually belonged to Michelle. Now, there were a lot of attempts to find her, a lot of searches, a lot of people searching, but it did not produce her body. Now, let's go 3 weeks later, afterwards. 3 weeks after she disappeared. Guess what? They found her phone. And it was near where it last pinged. The phone was found in a lake near Nella Bridge in Belle Isle. That lake, only 5 minutes from the home of Dale Smith. And in the direct path of the road that Smith could have traveled to get from his parents' house or get to his parents' house from his house the same afternoon that Michelle went missing. Are you following this? The phone just tossed out of a window, it appears, of a vehicle that was traveling in the very path from Dale's house to his father's house that he went to at 4:30 that same afternoon. Now, police have said that they believe that it's a two-person crime, meaning that the alleged suspect, Dale, would have had to have some help in ditching her vehicle, picking up someone, dropping somebody off, and then in somehow getting rid of her body. So it's not surprising that later on in this investigation, a couple of years ago in 2023, they actually searched again the property of Dale Smith Sr. They were looking for her remains under a concrete slab. Yep, he had poured a concrete slab, but they used penetrating radar, ground penetrating radar, yet they could not find anything. So the police still, they do not have enough evidence to arrest their main suspect, the alleged suspect, Dale. So since they could not do that, her mom turned around and sued Dale Smith Jr. in civil court for wrongful death regarding the death of her daughter. And of course, along with that comes depositions, right? And in those depositions, guess what? Mr. Dale, he pled the fifth. Yep, the fifth. Not answering on grounds that may intend to criminate him. He pled it to 100 questions. And yet, even the civil case was dropped. Again, not enough evidence. So today, this case is now with a special cold case unit with the Orlando Police Department. And they are looking. The lead detective now says that while Dale is certainly a suspect, an alleged suspect, as he always was, he said he's also going to take a fresh look at the case. He's going to look at other situations, leaving no stone unturned. That's important, by the way, that even if Dale is arrested sometime along the way, then the defense attorney is going to say, did you look at anybody else? And so they're going to take that look at other suspects. But when he was asked, what would it take? What would it take to solve this case? Well, one thing he said that was sad, that we all probably believe it the same way. He believed Michelle Parker is not alive, that she'll not be found alive. But to solve it, he said you need somebody to confess, or you need an eyewitness to come forward, or some other significant piece of evidence would need to be found. Now, I don't know about you. What do you believe? I believe the alleged suspect is the alleged perpetrator of this crime. Think with me. He had motive. He was embarrassed on national TV. He had a pattern of violence. In 2/3 of these situations, it is usually the ex-domestic partner who is the perpetrator of these deeds. So he has a pattern of violence. He has a motive. He was the last person seen with her. The phone was discarded, thrown out the window on the very path between his house and his father's house. Is there enough evidence to arrest him? Probably not. But you think with me. What do you think? Seems to be far-fetched that anybody else would be a better suspect then her ex-fiancé. So, my friend, this is a cold case. But help solve this cold case. If you know something, say something. Help solve the case of Michelle Parker. Now, there's been a $200,000 reward set up for anybody who can give a tip that will lead to an arrest or will lead to Michelle Parker being found. But don't do it for a reward. Do it because it's right. If you know something, say something. Call the Orlando Police Department, 407-246-2979. 407-246-2979. Or call Crimeline at 1-800-423-TIPS. 1-800-423-TIPS. 1-800-423-8477. You just might have the information that could bring justice for Michelle Parker. So until this time next time, this is Charlie Crimebuster reminding you, be safe, be alert, for the life you save may be your very own.
You have been listening to Charlie Crimebuster. You can find additional information and podcasts at charliecrimebuster.com. We would like to thank our sponsor, the Peacemaker Network, and also encourage you to support the first responders, military, and law enforcement personnel by contributing to the Peacemaker Network. That's peacemakernetwork.com. All music and sound effects are courtesy of Pixabay.com. That's Pixabay.com. You can also support us by subscribing to our YouTube channel, tag at Charlie Crimebuster, and then click the subscribe button. By doing so, you'll be notified each time we drop one of our shows. Another more convenient way for you to listen to our podcasts, or for you to say to your smart speaker, play Charlie Crimebuster. If you have comments or suggestions, we would love to hear from you, so please send them to charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. Or you can call or text us at 407-917-2211. That's 407-917-2211. Thank you for listening, and we hope that you will join us again for another exciting crime episode with Charlie Crimebuster.